So,
Yes.
Laurence, thank you so much for being with us today. Yesterday, we had 11 sessions. We had 14 speakers. They were from 8 different countries around the world. And the topics we covered yesterday were reflective practice, collective performance, enabling men to flourish, which was a session that was really important there, striving for social justice in Korea, supervision and equality, diversity, inclusion. And then we had a live session playing with avatars in a landscape for EDI. And then we had women empowerment, what is an interview, don't fight ageism. And then we had the business case for respectful workplaces. And we ended with, Ron was there as well. We had Juan Pablo in Mexico talking about carving the way for inclusion in organizations. So we're really excited to have you here with us today, Laurence, about radically recreating the curriculum for change. And I know that this is close to both our hearts, as we've both been in education for so many years. And I'm going to make you co-host so that you can then share your screen. And there we go. Over to you.
Oh, good morning. Hello, everyone. Claire, I don't know whether we can see the slideshow.
I will bring it up.
Thank you. Now we're short of time, I believe, so we can cut this down to 20 minutes. No problem at all. I don't need to show the link.
And we can always send a link afterwards.
Yeah, it's not important. I don't know. It's not important. So I'd like to talk about working in school education. I've watched my own kids, who are now 14 and 18, go through school education in both an American system and an English system. And I've watched them struggle in the last couple of years, moving from the US system to the UK system when it comes to one just starting a GCSEs and the other one just wrapping up 2 years of A levels and gone to university now. And I've watched them crying, and I think, you know what? I had to study like this 40 years ago. Why is it no different now? And the teachers are so young. QTSs. One of them burst into tears in a chemistry lesson, came back. They don't seem to have the training they need. Talk just for 15 minutes about the issues that we all see and our children and their tomorrow, So if we can move on to the next slide, Claire, please. It's all about inclusivity, because if children are struggling like this, they're not included. The UK that I've come across over the last 10 or 15 years, and in the Middle East and across Asia, are simply not trained well enough to make now the job I now have 7,000 staff to make sure that they're including everybody and engaging everybody. This quote you can see now, radically recreating. Education must not simply teach work, it must teach life. Now, I saw this last week. We had work, it must teach life. And his point was, it must teach life skills. He spent a short presentation on how we need to add co-curricular materials to the website in order to give the young people opportunities to learn the life skills they're going to need, which are not taught anywhere else. So he concentrated on it must teach life. And look at the education. I mean, they may have done 30, 40 years ago. This gentleman died in 1966, an American writer and philosopher, social philosopher. But the whole point is we're still using and plowing through for rote regurgitation. I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful. I just can't believe it that in this changing time, school curriculum, A levels, leading to a university degree, which may have worked 50 years ago, are steeped in tradition and are almost invaluable. They will not move, so the kids are suffering. So it's just all about control. It always was all about control and regurgitation and oversight of kids. Look at what they're doing in Finland now. I mean, it's just much more open and it's much more peer teaching and it's much more flipping classes and it's much more getting the kids engaged. Because if you're not getting them engaged in the classroom, they're not motivated. If they're not motivated, they're going to get depressed. They're going to go down. They're going to feel wasted. They're going to fade away like I did all the way through school. Unbelievable that it's still going on. I can see changes ahead. We're going to talk now about a system I discovered, a school system I discovered 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And it's based in the US. Believe it or not, like, when I went to their website, I discovered they've actually got a franchise school, and they were here. The two people who put that together were here in Lahore, opening up a school a few months ago. So there is one of those schools actually in Lahore. I mean, this is how quickly this American system is taking off. If you think about this, this started in America by an American couple who were fed up with the traditional way of doing things and seeing kids fail and not being inclusive, kids that were left behind. And now I find out yesterday, already there's a full working school franchised here, utilizing their ethos here in Lahore. It's just going to be a revolution. It's an absolute revolution. We need to future-proof everything. We don't know what tomorrow will be like. So how can we teach them for now? I don't believe we can. I don't believe that teachers know what jobs they're training for. We've moved beyond that. And you know what COVID is, as we all know, it has like 5 or 6 years. We're now. Why weren't we prepared for this? We flicked classes 20 years ago to great effect, and we would never go back. I'm talking about because you're working there with an oral culture in a second language, the British accreditation standards. You have to review the methodology. Otherwise, everybody's going to get frustrated and fail. And I've seen this happening between teachers. I've seen physicality between teachers and students because of the frustrations. If you not, you're going to lose students. The students are not coming because they know these A levels are not going to help them with the skills they need in life. Let's look at the futures curriculum. The futures curriculum started in the mid-90s in Australia, and Australia being the huge place it is, you've got cities, disparate cities in different areas of Australia where employers have different needs. And the first thing was they don't know which one to take. So they said, let's go out and talk to 10,000 stakeholders. We'll talk to the store heads, we'll talk to lawyers, people. Came up with the futures curriculum, what's called the new basics. And I actually met one of the ladies here this week who lived under that system in Australia for 2 years when she was at school. And it changed her life view about education, which is why she's working now in this school system here. So the basis of this was, if these O-level certificates that we've been pumping out for 70, 80, 90 years are not giving points to these young interviews, unable to talk about things they've done because they've done nothing. They have no experience. They've never worked in a team. They don't have a portfolio of authentic learning. They don't the ability to show skill sets that they've really got because these evidence in the So it spread across Australia in the early 2000s, and it was just embraced by everybody. In fact, the Americans are now doing it. I was talking to a school teacher in America recently who teaches science, and it would appear that the kids in that school, that high school in America, are only doing project-based work. That's all they're doing, project-based and peer teaching and from there. There's no actual taught classes. So the classes were flipped across and are now authentic, problem-based, and the engagement levels have risen. They've gone up so much. In that first year in Queensland, math alone across the system.
Jerome, hindi marinig. Wala akong may narinig.
Okay.
Jerome, wala akong may narinig.
Can somebody turn off that? Thank you. So this is the Acton Academy. You can see the slide here. Tomorrow's heroes. It goes back to the original community schooling where you have a one-room school and everybody works together and helps each other. So you've got enormous amounts of peer teaching going on. Can we move to the next slide, Claire, please? Okay. I have not really understood why there are a few girls going for digital technology, GCSEs and A-levels. And I had an opportunity to speak to the National Cyber Security Centre and to GCHQ and to Pearson's. And there is a new O-level, a new GSE that started in Ireland, and it's gone for its first graduation. So it's like 3 years old now. The Welsh also started one. Digital technologies, digital IT, GCSE, and more ladies were coming on it. GCHQ, I don't know if you know what that is, it's the General Communication Headquarters in England. It's our listening post for spying. They are very concerned that the constant battles that are taking place every day now between countries like Russia and China coming in and trying to cut down our hospital equipment like they did 5 or 6 years ago. These constant cyber battles. We're not training up enough people in the UK. We're not training up enough people in England, that's for sure. So GCHQ have done the math and they projected that over the next 20 years, we in the West, per se, are going to have a shortfall of 2 million cybersecurity experts. There will be 2 million jobs that are unfilled over the next 20 years, which leaves us very much with our defenses down, and they're extremely concerned about it. So they want to push the English, I won't say the British, because the Irish and the Welsh already have this, but the English are pushing back against this GCSE, and nobody really understands why. So what GCHQ have done is they set up a full training program for bringing in young people, concentrating actually on females, bringing them into a training program that lasts, it could last 7, 8 years. From the age of like 12 or 13, you could take your daughter, as I did, to the Gloucester University campus in Cheltenham, 4-day program in order to learn about cybersecurity, the basics of cybersecurity. So what you're looking at now, this slide, is from GCHQ. You can see it says Cyber First in the top right-hand corner. Cyber First is the training program for GCHQ that starts with these short online courses for kids of 12, 13, 14, 15, and then it takes them through higher level curriculum, part-time and with MOOCs, with short online learning courses and residential courses, in order that they can prepare a pipeline to take them in for apprenticeship training for GCHQ. So you could come out of the apprenticeship training, which they will pay you for. The government has put this money aside. They will pay you for, and then you can go and work within the GCHQ and the cybersecurity industry. Because at the moment, only 2% of ladies and girls in schools are taking A-level digital technologies. So the pipeline is very bereft of female input. And 4 or 5 years down the line, when cybersecurity becomes the next world war, then we won't have the soldiers and they won't have their shields to protect us. And as we're coming out of Europe, our shields are being depleted anyway. We're actually, I'll say it again, we're in a revolution now. And we need to be able to be as agile and flexible as possible. But we need to be future thinking. And I don't believe our educational leaders in government really understand how important it is to make this shift now. So professors in England are on 0 contract hours now. Well, why is that? Why are professors complaining they're not being given respect? Is it because they have a PhD? I suppose many of you have PhDs. That's a doctor of philosophy. How old is that? What's the relevance of that to tomorrow and the next day? Bearing in mind the paradigm shift we're in. We have never been in this before, are less prepared for the future than their kids that they're teaching. And the kids know that. And they're falling out. They're falling out in droves. So in the Clinton era, 20 years ago, their Minister of Education or their equivalent actually left to set up a K-12 online learning school, which took off hugely, hugely. It compensated for far better effect than going to school full time. It became very, very famous, very, very quickly, and a huge take up. And I've been promoting short, online, bite-sized chunks of information for schools. I have a list of probably 30 topic areas. I won't go into it now, but I have a list of maybe topic areas that children need to know. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, this digital revolution means that we need to be training them now for robotics and artificial intelligence and nanotechnology. Now, some of this is coming into school, but the teachers aren't trained. And this is my whole point. We have kids now who would rather go home and study MOOCs, massive open online courses, in the topics they choose, not forced upon them, with curriculum they're putting together in bite-sized jigsaw puzzle pieces along their level of interest. So they're finding their own independent learning journeys. They're not being forced into A-level tracks. They're finding their own way. This is my interest, and I know better than the teachers do. The teachers can't teach me this stuff. And I think that's where the crux comes. My last role was to stop young, so well educated, so eager to move hires from a big oil company. I had to stop them resigning. They were resigning because they would end up resigning. That hierarchy is like a government hierarchy. It's almost impossible to crack with the best will in the world. If they don't understand the need to change, they will not make changes because they're stuck in the status quo. I won't go into the politics of that. So this is really all I wanted to say to you, but I'd like to get your feedback on how to move forward. I have a pen and paper here, and I'm quite happy to take notes. There will not be a test. So thank you very much indeed. And if you have any feedback for me, I'd be willing to take it. Thank you.
Well, I've got a few questions, Laurence.
Go.
Should we stop the slides and then we'll go into a view where we can see you even better? Just to let you know, Laurence, the internet, I think it was yours, was cutting out a little bit. So I just put your picture there and took you off video. I've just asked you to start your video again, you know, bottom left. Shall we try and see how that goes? And we can always just put your picture there if the internet plays about with us. So my question is, I love it. I love the MOOCs. I love the creativity. I love the journey of a student with support, deciding on what they want to learn, therefore there's passion, and what they need to learn. One of my concerns, and I think it's been exasperated by what we've all experienced because of COVID, is what way can we ensure with all of this that students are still getting that experience of being with other learners face to face? And how important is that to you?
It's imperative. You can't do it without. And so what they did in the States was they set up community groups. There were so many of these K-12 online learners that obviously that peer support was missing. It's more than peer support, it goes much deeper than that. And so the families in certain areas put together communities of learning, as I did when I introduced MOOCs into your company. So I selected needs analysis that they needed 100 of them that would help them in their careers, but gives them individual choice. And the localities, the communities, which had maybe 30 or 40 kids in each, came together for school day, but came together in homes and in halls, and they had these conversations that were not taking place in school. I mean, if we were doing it 20 years ago, why can't it be done now to greater effect? It's because of the learning space. If you look at the school learning space, it was built 30, 40, 50 years ago in some. They're not designed for that. Newer schools are. Newer schools have more flexible learning space. If you don't have the learning space, that's why this Acton Academy has become so popular so quickly, because it's about community learning and peer support from all age groups, from someone who's 8 or 9 to someone who's 6 or 7, from someone who's 14 or 15 to someone who's 8 or 9. You don't get that in a school because we're all separated and shackled to desks. You know what I mean?
I love the idea of ensuring that it's about ability and peer support and not about age, because so many of the structures in schools are putting people in boxes and rigid. So by different age groups working together, there's so much can take place.
If they're enabled to do so, but if they're stuck in their classroom with a teacher who's got to stick to a tight timetable with no spare hours in the week, and is confined to ticking curriculum boxes for 300,000 students all over England exactly the same week, dead in the water. It ain't going to work. I give it 5 years. I just give it 5 years. We'll see what happens.
I think as well the way that schooling is in terms of the curriculum that people are told they have to teach, even the syllabuses for GCSEs, A levels, IB, and so forth. And what's a way to make it where teachers in training are enabled to support this new type of learning that you're advocating, when the curriculum is so rigid?
Fixed. Yeah, so fixed. Well, the curriculum cannot be so rigid. It has to change. It has to become more flexible. Otherwise, as I say, if you have got professors in universities who student numbers are falling drastically in America. They've just fallen. Some universities are going to have to close. This is the beginning of the revolution. It won't be a technological push from the ed tech. It'll be a sociological pull from the stakeholders saying, this is not working for us anymore. We have other choices. Thank you. We'll go elsewhere. And employers, if you could imagine, you want to employ this 16-year-old and he comes to you with a LinkedIn profile. He comes to you with 8 or 9 courses in, let's say, computer technologies from MIT, from University of Pittsburgh, from the University of Cambridge, from the University of Warwick, which, as you know, my kids are already accumulating these. Which one's he going to choose? The one who comes with A-level certificates or the one who comes with 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 chosen courses to show their passion, to show their autonomy, to show their intrinsic motivation? I'd hire them in a flash, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. So the other thing that's coming to my mind is, and it's a tricky one, what way can we support the young people in deciding what they choose to study in terms of career guidance, and especially, and it's been around for a long time, career guidance for jobs in the future, or I would call it life projects, because career is changing so much. When we are not fully sure of the landscape.
I love that, career projects, I like that. We don't know the landscape, nobody knows the landscape. I think GCHQ are a good indicator of the landscape. They have their finger on the pulse, cutting edge everything all over the world. They have it at GCHQ in that building in Cheltenham. They have it, and go through look what they're looking in the problem they or 5 years or 3 years down the line, but everything is shifting as they go. But if anybody's got their finger on the pulse, it's GCHQ, MI6, MI5. They've got their finger on the pulse, and if they know that they need the thing they need, do you know they want autistic people? They want people with autisms. They're actively looking at people with autism. They don't want outgoing people. They want people who focus on a computer down and go deep naturally. They're employing really young people because they've got specific individual personality traits. Nobody knows what's going to happen 2 years down the road. Nobody knows what's going to happen 6 months from now, Claire. So it's impossible. But I think the kids have got their finger on the, well, I know the kids have got their finger on the pulse more than the teachers. The young people, the young teachers, all of them young, under 40, who are teaching my kids in England in the best school in Herefordshire, by the way, the best school. I offered to go in and help them when COVID started, set up e-learning. And I asked of the A-level teachers, which teachers had got E-level online to take it out of the curriculum and bring it into a deeper learning. None of them, not one of them. And some of them were only 24 and 25 years old. Not one of them.
You've frozen a little bit there, Laurence. So I'll ask anyone else. Any questions for Laurence before we close?
I just like to apologize to Lawrence for the noise earlier. Yes,
Hi, Ron.
yes, yes. Hello, Lawrence. Lawrence, that was one of my team members. You're still in the process of learning Zoom etiquettes and things like that.
No problem at all. We're all still learners.
She was speaking in Filipino, telling me, Sir Rom, I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't. So, and it usually happens in our meetings, in our broadcasts. And I would like to orient one of our blind members, Joey Ortiz. Joey is blind. So, Joey, you are in the midst of a virtual meeting. Dr. Lawrence was our speaker, and with us also is Claire Beckett McEnroy, and our members Nikki Obanon and Galaxy 20 J2 is Nancy Kaputli. Huawei 8 is Gloria. And then Juan Pablo is also with us, and Leia Inakay. So that's Joey. And Lawrence, Lawrence, I'm curious with the MOOCs because persons with disabilities normally, I mean, most of the MOOCs that you were speaking about earlier would be for academic training, academic. So I was thinking, is there something about, let's say, most persons with disabilities in the Philippines would develop creative talents like singing, performing, dancing. That's one way, that's a popular way of making a living, an alternative living in the Philippines. Are there education systems that would help persons with disabilities in that area?
Those are usually set up nationally. If there are, they're set up nationally, or they're set up for communities using community talent. MOOCs, the wonderful thing of micro learning MOOCs is that they're not unique. If you look at a university of 14 or 16 academic preparation, then you get into the meat of the actual topic. And hidden in all of that, an academic which should help you on a degree program, traditional degree program. And built into that, by the time you've finished your 3 or 4 years at university on your undergraduate program, you have been covertly, because of the assignments you've been given and the grading and the tutorials you've received, been prepared to go forward for an interview for a master's degree. And while you're doing a master's degree, covertly inside that is the academic formal preparation to help you in an interview for a doctorate. So if you took out the piffle, if you took out that piffle at the beginning and that piffle at the end, you've got the meat in the middle. It may only be 4 or 5 specific to the topic. That's not really academic. So you can find MOOCs in music. You can find MOOCs in making music. You can find MOOCs in everything. Pretty much everything available in these short 4 or 5 week courses through that or your phone. So yes, they're out there, but most of the actual practical dancing and singing that has to be done in the community. My daughter does lessons locally. She also actually today she wanted to move from the general choir to the training choir, which means she will online be 100 so these things are there and you can join them online from anywhere, but they are there where feasible without the physicality issue.
Thank you, Laurence.
I loved your mention, Laurence, about disability as well, in terms of one thing that was mentioned yesterday, neurodiversity, and the number of banks actually consciously seeking people with neurodiversity, because so many banks, about 20% or more of the people there are not IT based. 80% are moving towards actually working in those particular IT areas, and neurodiversity is one of the things that really supports that industry. So that's really interesting as well.
Yeah. In fact, the guy I know from GCHQ, and I don't know his surname because you never find out, goes out into the community to press for young people to join their curriculum, and he himself is quite autistic. Doing stuff down, he's leader, he's the head of painting, and he's looking for like-minded people who can be put into specific roles where they would flower and blossom. Whereas if they went into any other job, they might even lose the job if they got one. They might even feel pushed aside, and those expectations are met. So his role is to find people with very specific skill sets that they were born with or have developed on continuums.
Fabulous. So, Laurence, great presentation, such amazing ideas and progressive thoughts. I have one last question. If you had a magic wand and you had one wish for your children's children in terms of education, what would that be?
That they would follow the Acton Academy's methodology of not training teachers and not bringing trained teachers in, but they would bring in team coaches. The whole system is Socratic. The whole system is you walk in and you initiate conversation and you elicit, you bring out the experiences of those with you, even in younger years. You bring in people who can use questions, doing separate areas of research and reading and looking at YouTube, bring it together in a group to make a holistic method of learning that will engage various multiple intelligences. But it would be team teaching, because that's what schools like the Acton Academy are doing now. They don't want teachers, they want coaches, Claire, they want team coaches. And in this meeting I had here across these 160 schools, the heads of that, coaching came up again and again and again. And I said, I'm not moving forward in my job unless you let me train your teachers to be team coaches.
Fabulous. And you know, I totally advocate that coaching should be on the curriculum for teachers, of course, with leadership and absolutely with the students. And imagine if it could go even further, not just the teachers or team coaches working with the students, but students coaching each other. Generative thinking, active listening, powerful questioning. They're skills for life, aren't they? I hate the word soft skills. It was mentioned yesterday. These are actually core skills.
And that's what the academy. Yeah, the Acton Academy are training up these teachers, and I'm sure there are other. They're training up their teachers to actually facilitate what you're talking about, facilitate that level of peer learning and peer engagement. Peer learning, it just goes back to village learning. It's amazing. It's what was 1,000 years ago should be now, you know.
Fabulous. Laurence, it's always great talking to you. Amazing insight as ever. I know you're there in Pakistan, in Lahore at the moment. So thank you for being with us. Have a fabulous day. Thank you.
Bye, Joe. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye, bye.